Let's get into the game review. The game review we're talking about today is Trismegistus. It is a 2019 design that just came out a few weeks ago at Essen. The designers are Federico Pierlorenzi and Daniele Tascini. You recognize those names because they are part of that Italian collective that has designed some of our absolute favorite games. The artists are Paweł Nisolek and Paulina Wach. It is 90 to 120 minutes. That is a lie. And the weight is 4.0. And basically what it is it is an alchemy-themed game. Trismegistus is the name of Hermes Trismegistus, who was the first alchemist and the man who wrote a lot of the treatises that all kinds of other alchemists after him would take at face value. Basically, alchemy, the history of alchemy is Newton.
It's like chiropractic.
Isaac Newton. Well, no.
Well,
Isaac Newton.
Jake, why don't you explain what you do in this game? You've played it one time.
I played it one time.
Tell us what do you do in this game.
Okay, first of all, I thought the teach was really good. I
Thank
felt
you.
like I was playing the game. I mean, obviously not on the level of which many plays would make it happen. But
What do you do in this game, Jake?
Here's what you basically do. You're trading a red piece for a blue piece, for a yellow piece, for, a hamburger. It's like you're just turning one thing into another to try and turn it into the next thing, to try and turn it into the next thing.
And why are we doing that?
I mean, for points? No. Okay, so it's you're trying to get lead into gold, right? Because that's the whole theory of that. Let's call it a science.
Yes.
I guess it's a science,
It is.
sort of.
Isaac
So
Newton,
that's
Isaac
the
Newton's life.
overlay. But really, you're just kind of
Isaac
turning one
Newton's-
thing into another, into another, into another.
Isaac Newton's entire life was dedicated to alchemy. All of his physics discoveries were his side gig. His main focus was alchemy, because one proton, I believe, or one neutron separates lead from gold.
So
the most valuable thing and the least valuable thing.
close.
And so they were trying to figure out, how do we make one into another? We know that we can make isotopes. We know that we can do these various things. How do we do
And
this?
the brightest mind couldn't quite do it.
So you have a player board.
And remember, for people sending in corrections for Tom's understanding of chemistry, that's contact@gamebrainpod.com.
We're not really talking about chemistry, though, are we?
No.
We're talking about alchemistry.
Alchemistry, exactly right. You have a player board in front of you. You are going to start off with one sample of lead,
material.
a sample of copper, a sample of tin, and a sample of mercury. By the way, from this period, mercury is a cure-all. You can swallow it whole.
Just rub it all over your face.
It will
With your acne.
Yeah, it'll do a lot of good things for you. It'll really help you out. So you should really do that. Anyway, and then beyond that, there is iron, there is silver, and there is gold.
Yep.
In the game, we're going to roll a pool of dice, and the dice are going to have their three colors: red dice, black dice, and white dice, and they are going to have the symbols of those various substances on them. They will not have a gold symbol. They will not have a silver symbol, but all of the other metals, they will have that symbol. They will be separated into little pots, and then when it is your turn to go, if you do not have a die already, you will be able to grab one of those dice. If I grab a die from a pool that has 4 dice of that type, then I get that die at a strength of 4.
Which just means you could use it 4 times.
Correct. I have a potency of 4. That means I'm going to be able to use it 4 times. What can I use it for? Well, I can use one step or more steps to get that element. So if I take lead, I can, and at 4, I could
a resource.
Spend the whole thing and take 4 lead and just put them right down there. Another thing is, in order to transmute these metals into other metals, in order to move them up the noble chain, you have to have noble essences, alchemical essences, essentially. These are mystical things that we don't quite understand what they are, but think of them like catalysts, in a reaction that are going to allow something to happen. Each metal has a catalyst for that metal.
That's not true.
One of them.
That's not true.
There's groupings.
You can use any catalyst you want to transmute.
No, what I'm saying is when you're using a die, you can use it to get one kind of
create
catalyst.
them in the first place.
Yeah,
Correct.
exactly. Yeah.
So you could spend a die point to get the catalyst that type gives you.
Sure.
Some of them, one of them anyway, iron, allows you to get any type of catalyst.
Yeah.
Most others give you only one type.
Right. That's one of the 3 things. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Third thing you can do is you can transmute elements. Transmuting elements does not rely on the shape of the die, the symbol on the die. It relies on the color of the die, because if you want to transmute lead into copper or copper into tin, those have black lines that connect those. So black dice can do that. To go from tin to mercury or from mercury to iron, those are white connections. So you have to use white dice. If you want to go from iron to silver or silver to gold, that is red connections. Right. So you have to use red dice to do that. Whenever you do a transmutation, what you're doing is you're moving a cube from one section of your board to the next section of your board, and you always have to spend an alchemical symbol. And whenever you spend that alchemical symbol, that essence, you are moving up a track that is showing your mastery of that particular essence. And each one of the 4 essences in the game relate to one of the 4 elements.
Yeah.
I think of all
Earth,
the games,
air, water, and fire.
Of all the games that I get a glimpse that there's so much more to understand, this one does that really well for me. Like, I played it, and I could see there was like a superstructure just waiting to be discovered, that it would all tie together so much more logically if you had a full grasp of that. You know what I mean? Like, the processes and the way they've scattered your resources and your choices, that you need to try and reweave it by options of how you use the dice. It's interesting, but it was...
Well, I want to thank you for saying that I taught it well.
You did.
I taught it much better the second time, and
Well,
I
that
really
makes
felt like
sense.
I had an idea of what I was teaching in a better way.
Well, the next time we play, you're going to have to reteach it to me, so I'll get it as an even better.
This is a game that I think most people are going to need to be retaught. This is let's be clear, this is a tough teach. This is a tough teach. Part of the problem is that when you have a game that is very much a clockwork, and this is a clockwork, these are gears within gears. These are, this action needs to do this, which does this. This action gets you this, which gets you this, which gets you this. There are a lot of mechanisms that interact with other mechanisms in this game. When I have a game that is like that, I tend to rely on the theme to understand the game. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
In Agricola, in order to feed my family, I need to build fences so that I can hold animals. And I get that. That makes sense, right? But then I also need to buy a fireplace so I can cook those animals,
the pieces
and so on and so forth.
in Agricola, the vegetables look like vegetables.
Not
the grain,
not the base game, but yeah.
Really.
Just cubes.
Just saying, the grain looks like grain, the pigs look like pigs, the cows look like cows, and the sheep look like sheep, the farmers look like farmers. Yeah. I think one of the things that Tom was doing and explaining it to make it actually seem like it makes more sense than it actually does is he's talking about iron and copper and tin. Yeah. While we're actually playing this game, and I would say to you, Jake, please point to iron.
No, you couldn't.
You couldn't.
Only by where it was on the board.
Well, you have to look into the game rules to know that this symbol means
yes, you do.
Iron. As it is, these are just kind of, are they Roman symbols? What were these symbols that we're using?
No, they're like some of them are
like astrological symbols,
I guess.
for Mercury.
Yeah, I mean they're
but I often struggled in this game to actually find a word for the thing that I was pointing at. It's like, I'm going to do this. What is this symbol?
But they clearly did that as another layer of complexity for you to decode. Yeah. That's not like by accident. They're like, hey, we'll make it even that much more complicated.
I would say that's a flaw.
I didn't like the game either, but that's neither here nor there. I mean,
the fact of the matter is that when you have a very, very complex game, understanding the theme of the game can help you understand what the game is.
That is not the case here.
As I was saying in Agricola has a whole bunch of little mini games and mini actions and things that you understand, not because you understand them because it's totally clear how to do this and how to do that. It's clear because I understand the story that is being told.
Sure.
And once you understand the story that's being told, everything starts to make sense,
that
right?
Makes sense.
Oh, that's the rule for that? Yeah, that makes sense. And now I
am a farmer. I am collecting animals. I have to keep them somewhere, and then they will breed, and I can cook them and eat them.
Unfortunately, Unfortunately, science education in America being what it is, we do not have the proper basis for
our
alchemical understanding
of alchemy.
Sadly, we are behind.
Well, I mean, it's a loose.
Kudos to our European listeners because clearly you're going to be way ahead of us, and you're going to
got a lot of extra
know.
gold.
Immediately know what these symbols are.
So to finish, just kind of like the broad how this game works.
Yeah.
We are transmuting all these different elements, and then we are essentially like completing contracts, which are called experiments.
Yes, we have experiment cards, and there are experiment cards that are on the board that we can purchase by spending
many of them in our hand, though. And when we finish them,
you get points.
Then we kind of tuck them at the top of our board, and we get kind of more bonuses, and then we
more
start
resources.
We start putting together these little tiles that we can get more bonuses when we put them in little lines. And if we get all 7 formula tiles together, then we have completed the
Philosopher's Stone.
The Philosopher's Stone.
Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. #.
Sure.
And if it sounds like in our description here that you're having a tough time visualizing this, I can tell you that playing the game is not much different because there are these mechanisms in the game where I take this square and I take it from here and I put it there, and yes, I can see I can get some rewards there, but what that is supposed to actually represent, I have no idea.
Well, they didn't completely rely heavily on that. They don't. That's not. I mean, I always assume that when somebody makes a game, whatever that it is, that's what they meant it to be.
Having played it 3 times now, I can sort of see it more. I can see that I'm transmuting these elements to conduct experiments. When I conduct an experiment, I have unlocked a formula. That formula goes into the center area of my board where I am basically putting together a list of formulas that are going to unlock the Philosopher's Stone. It's going to unlock the mystery of all alchemical reactions, and I'm going to get that. And
you just made it sound so much more cool than it looks, though, to be honest. Like, that description is very generous as far as like what's on the table in front of you.
That's what it is. The problem is that
you got that creative viewpoint of it, but like, really what it is, it's like you're kind of just pushing pieces, and it's...
I had to search for the story, and it took 3 games to find the story in a way that I can tell it well.
Okay.
But it is there. It's just not evident, and it's not easy to get to because there does not exist a good frame of reference for people to understand it.
So it's a tough game to teach.
Yes.
It is a harder game to understand.
I agree.
And especially because I think what we're getting at is like it's a very hard game to visualize, like, what are we actually doing here?
I agree.
And I think like even at the end of the first game, I still was struggling with, I'm really not sure. I know I'm making one thing into another, and I'm completing contracts of doing that, and then all this stuff is going to chain together, but I never got the visual of, and like the steps you're talking about with like formulas in order to, like, it's pretty weak. I
100% agree with Trey on this point. Like, you can see there's interesting complexity, but there's no.
And like I said, I was struggling even to be able to describe what I was doing. It's like, I'm going to take this die. Well, what die is that? Well, like I could look, and eventually I could say, oh, that was a mercury die.
Yeah,
that was
you
a
don't
red
know
mercury.
it just by looking at it.
You certainly do. And so I think part of this is like a good movement in board games was making board games that are not language dependent, where the game itself, the actual pieces are good across the world. And this is certainly an example of this. But I feel like we have gone a couple of steps too far here where...
No, this game could have been in a foreign language for me, and I would have been the same experience.
But I think at least if there was a foreign language there and you were trying to pronounce, garçon or like, something like that. You would still be able to say garçon. You'd see those words.
To be clear, if there was a little sticker set that you could get in your language that you could put on your individual board so that you know this symbol means iron, this symbol means tin, this symbol means that. All of a sudden, a lot of the issues go away. Not all the issues, but some of the issues.
Right. The player aid should have had that. It has a bad player aid.
It is a virtually incomprehensible player aid. It was one of those player aids that after the first game, I looked at the player aid and I was like, oh, now I understand what this is saying. And it's not exactly, the player aid is not telling me what I really want from a player aid particularly well. Let's talk about another issue about the game. Let's talk about how interactive it is. Because it is a game in which it does have interaction. Let's be clear. There is a pool of dice in the center of the board, and you are choosing dice out of that. If you choose one of the pools that has 4 dice in it, and I want to have a die from that, I'm getting a die that's 3 strength instead of 4 strength.
Correct.
So that is less.
Absolutely.
Right? There is also... experiments cards that are on the board. There are also artifacts that are on the board. Didn't even talk about artifacts. I'm not going to talk about artifacts. All I want to say is that there are tiles that you can get that you can slot into your board that when you perform a transmutation, you get a bonus for performing that transmutation.
Yeah, it's like a tiny little engine builder.
Correct.
Yeah.
Exactly right. So choosing ones that other people want is an interaction to some degree. And then there is
But that all comes down to just turn order. I mean, it's not like you're bartering for it or anything or playing for it.
No. But the fact of the matter is that for most of the play of the game, you are staring at your board, trying to make sense of what is going on, and your knowledge of what other people are doing and your ability to be looking at what they're doing and playing against somebody as opposed to playing your own little mini game in front of you. So far, 3 plays in, is very light.
Yeah,
is very light. It is very multiplayer solitaire. The one thing they did to address that was they have a mechanic called reaction tokens, which we call follow tokens because
which makes more sense.
Well, yeah, because where we know this mechanic is from Glory to Rome.
Glory to Rome.
Glory to Rome.
Exactly right. So when we do, I'm not going to say Glory to Rome again. Oh, I just said it. Glory to Rome.
Glory to Rome.
In that game, you play a card, and other people can follow that action, and it's the same in this.
Out of turn.
Yeah, exactly.
Carl Chudok.
You have 2 Carl Chudok, fantastic game. You have 2 reaction tokens that when you flip them over, you get to do a single action based on what the action of somebody else is. So, for instance, I take a white tin die, and I am doing white actions, and I am doing transmutations. I transmute all the way up to the top of the white part of the board, and now I want to do a transmutation that is going to be in the red section of my board. I wait until somebody who has a red die takes any action, and then I do a follow action. I use a reaction token, and by doing that, what I am doing is I am able to do a transmutation in the red area, even though I did not choose the red die.
Yeah.
In theory, this makes the game more interactive. In theory, this is a good thing. I will say that toward the end of my last play of it, I felt like I was starting to get that. I was starting to figure out I'm doing A and B right now. I need to do C, so I'm just watching for somebody to have either the right symbol or the right color on their die, and that's where I'm going to use my follows.
Yeah.
But other than that,
it doesn't really get any more complicated than that.
No, that's 100%.
That's really all it does.
So it's still very low interactivity, like even that bit. So yeah, we found, especially in the 3rd round of the game, long turns.
Yep.
It's real easy to check out on other people's turns in this game, especially because the nature of it, like the real positive of the game is that like once you kind of get going, you can have these kind of fantastic explosions of cascading reactions where you do one little thing and that's going to trigger your artifact, which is going to trigger 3 transmutations. And that will, and suddenly you've got all these things. And so for you, that can be exciting. You're doing it right. You're linking all these things together. This has no value to every other player on the board. They're not sharing in this experience. And maybe worse than that, like we're missing Albert, our rules lawyer here, is you also kind of like, there's a lot of stuff going on other people's boards, and like you can't really tell what they're doing.
No,
so there's no accountability or even and like when there's been a few times when you kind of fact check like what are you doing there? It's like, well, that's not how that actually works or whatever. And so there's definitely been times, and maybe there's a character flaw of mine where like we've gotten to the end of the game and somebody's had a certain result and I kind of don't buy it. Like I did that to Tom in the first game where I was like, his score was over twice everybody else's on the first one. Having played the game better now the second time, I now know that Tom's score in that first game was entirely reasonable. In fact, it might have actually been below average when it comes to
for what you could do. Yeah,
for what you can do. But I just still have no idea. Like that, what other people are doing on their board is I'm completely removed from it, and like that's a problem. Whereas I know games that I like tend to be like I can play a few games and I understand what's going on other people's boards, and it actually has a big impact upon the decisions I'm making. I know when I'm playing a good game of Terraforming Mars or I'm playing a good game of Agricola, I'm looking at other people's boards and I'm trying to figure out, okay, what are they going to do next? What do I need to race to?
then I guess my question for you guys, because you have a better perspective on it, do you think this game was trying to do that and failed? Or specifically said, we're not super interested in those kind of interactions. Everybody just do their thing. And there will be crisscrosses, but like that's not super important.
I don't want to guess intent.
It's tough to do. A lot of these games, they started coming up with these mechanics. They found them interesting, and they are. This is a good clockwork. This is a well thought out clockwork.
It's an exploding clockwork, yeah.
And that's another thing we should say. This game does something more than any other game I've ever seen, which is it explodes. You have 3 dice you're going to choose each turn, and there are only 3 turns in the game.
Yeah.
So you're going to have 9 dice all total for the entire game to use. And it can seem, after the first round, that I don't see how anybody can do anything in this game. It is virtually impossible. Your first action seems so anemic, and the things you're trying to do seem so vast. Mm-hmm. But it explodes. It gets to a point where by the end of the game, I'm doing one action that is flipping this thing to get this bonus, which is giving me this, which is completing this formula, which is getting this, which is flipping that, which is getting these bonuses. Sometimes we've had things where I've seen 7, 8 bonuses chain from a single die move, from a single action, and transforms that player's game. Really, really does amazing things for their score and for the way there is. That is pleasurable. I'm going to say that is a really cool thing when you feel like, not to get too alchemical about it, but it does feel like you're having a chain reaction that is positive and it feels like thematically, it feels like a eureka moment, right?
Yeah.
You're having this breakthrough, which is cool, which
that
is
sounds
really,
cool.
really interesting.
That just wasn't my experience off of first play. And I could see I'm not sure I'd be able to put the time in to get there. And is that worth it for me?
I think that maybe your second or third play you would get there because it is one of those things that you start to figure out pretty quick.
You'll get there. I went and checked the ratings and reviews on this game, and there's clearly there are people that really like this. So not that we're outliers, but there's some people that do really like that, and I can understand the kind of exploding combination aspect of the game is really appealing, and there's been some interesting stuff on their forums and in their ratings because the people that do like the game are feeling very hostile towards the people who don't like the game. And a lot of it's kind of coming down to the kind of get good noob kind of comments. In fact, the publisher or one of the members, I think, of the publisher came on and even said something like, well, this is actually a hallmark of our games is that we're not holding your hand.
Right.
We're making kind of a harder core game here.
Splotter says the same thing.
Yeah.
And that's fine. But as a casual gamer, for me, I'm kind of the always noob. And my reaction to some is just greater than the reaction to others. This one didn't pull me in and think ooh, if I really get good at this, I'm going to... Some do. I have that reaction to some of them. Some of them...
So in some ways, this game could suffer from runaway leader syndrome, but it's so low interactivity that's not even the correct description because you are kind of just doing your own thing.
Could you play this by yourself? You almost
it does.
could.
It does have a one player. It does have a solo mode.
It does. It feels like you are. Yeah. And I think this may just go to the kind of group that we are, or maybe just the player that I am. Is okay, this is a low interactivity game.
Yeah.
This is not why I want to play board games. I also put a really high premium on games that link, mechanics or mechanisms to theme, and it's an appropriate thing they're doing with the theme here, but the theme is so meaningless.
Yeah.
It's just a bunch of symbols, and we're doing where symbol A becomes symbol 4, which becomes symbol green, or whatever, and it doesn't mean anything. It's not constructing a narrative that I'm at all interested in. So there's no story. For me, there's no emotional hook. There's very low player interaction.
And even, I know this is going to seem silly, but even the characters you get to be, they're not cool characters.
You're all the same person.
They're just all old. No, I think
you've got the same cat.
A cool thing about the game is that every player board is different. The formulas that you will unlock are different for each player. That is pretty good. It is asymmetric, and it's asymmetric in an interesting way. That is not terrible.
The game also we did it. We played it again Friday night. We were about 4 hours with Teach, right? I think I looked at the heavy cardboard, did a playthrough. They were over 3.5 hours on their 4-player game with Teach. So it's long. It's not a short game, and so I'm a little uncomfortable. Like, I don't want to do reviews of games that I don't like.
Sure.
Like, we're not trying to be like necessarily like fair umpires who get games and then review them. I mostly want to come on the show and say, hey guys, check this out. It's awesome. Right. And here's why it's awesome.
Yeah. We've had a lot of people that have said, you know, on the Facebook page, like, darn you, you're costing me more money because I'm going to run out and buy this immediately. I think part of our responsibility is to say when, you know, where does it hit you? For me, I have a lot of games. So my bar for am I going to buy this game has to be, where do I see this? Where do I see this fitting in? For me, Trismegistus does not meet that mark.
Yeah.
It's very interesting.
I would say
game.
Try before you buy.
Yes. I'm
not saying don't. Though. I'm just saying this is where it's a small percentage that are going to really love it.
Let's talk about who this game is for.
Okay.
I think that the solo game, which I have not played, I think could be fantastic because it is that clockwork of an engine builder that explodes up. And if I don't have other players playing it and I'm doing that own game, I think that could be phenomenal, first of all. So if you're a solo gamer looking for a really intricate puzzle of a game, that could be great for you. If you are a person that is cool with low interaction games, that wants a deep game that I don't have to be interacting with the other players so much and I can sort of focus on my own game. There are people, Matt is one of those gamers. He is totally fine with that. Has no issue with that at all. Trismegistus might be a very different experience. A lot of our objections to the game might go away if that is your play style. But for most people, I would say that Daniele Tascini has designed many great games.
Yeah,
I'm a fan. I put this into the second or third tier of their design.
Right. Which is the designer who we're talking about, who did Zulkin and Teotihuacan here? Is it Daniele Tascini? Yours? Okay. So I'm definitely a fan of many of the other games.
Yeah. This one doesn't quite hit it. This is the mark.
And again, I don't want to be mean, but I also don't. I want to be honest that like my reaction to the first play of this game was like one of the most negative reactions I've ever had to a board game.
Really
I was angry.
I said you had an allergy. I said you had an allergic reaction to this play.
I was mad at this game. I had such a negative first. I mean, people playing the other game noticed.
To me, this is like what I say to my son a lot. I'm like, Logan, if it's not fun, just stop. Like, don't play that game.
But we have to do a review.
I know, but it's like, just this.
So I would say this. I would say that if it sounds interesting to you, play it. By all means, play it. We do not want to dissuade anyone from this. However, if you have a limited game budget and what we're saying seems to make sense to you, that maybe that's not going to be the best way for me to spend my game dollars, I would suggest looking elsewhere.
Yeah.
I would suggest looking elsewhere, with the exception of the types of gamers that I just mentioned. People that are solo gamers, this could be an awesome solo game. I haven't played it, but all the indicators are that this would make an amazing solo game. And people that are into low interaction games that are very puzzly, very thinky, this hits that very, very hard and very, very well.
I was trying to think of a game that has used this. I mean, there's a bunch of Alchemy games out there. I can't think of a single one that I like.
The Alchemist is a good game.
The Alchemist, and that's the one with the app.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is it the one with the app? I'm not sure, but it's
got a form. Okay.
It's a good game.
I'm saying generally, like, okay, I'm just kind of stating my bias here. I haven't liked any of these games, and to me, it's usually an indication that this is kind of a pasted on.
Right. Because it's not really a story.
Right.
It's like you're making a sandwich. So what did you do at the end of the day? Yeah.
Yeah.
I will say that having played this game, I would love to do a medieval hospital game where you have patients that are coming and you're trying to balance the 4 bodily humors.
You're bleeding people, and
you have leeches, you have mercury and
urine,
urine, exactly. And they come in. Right. It's like, well, clearly this man has too much cholera. We're going to have to lower that, and we're going to have to.
I would much rather play that game. I would totally play that game.
I think that would be hilarious. The humors, right? Ladies and gentlemen, that was our review of Trismegistus 2019. Sorry, it couldn't have been better, but it didn't hit our funny bone.
Hit something.
the juice was definitely not worth the squeeze
Oh, Lord.
for us.
It's a lot of squeeze.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of
A lot of squeeze.
squeeze.
Tiny little drop of juice.